Hello everybody, today we are presenting our work titled Feasible Solutions for the Post-COVID-19 City. Insights from the 15-minute city, tactical urbanism and superblock approaches carried out by Luca Maria Francisco Fabris, Federico Camerin, Gerardo Semprebon and Riccardo Maria Balzarotti. The analysis deals with three current strategies proposed before the outbreak of the COVID-19 to tackle urban infrastructure and climate issues inherited from the evolution of the global city. We dealt with the application of measures related to 15-minute city, tactical urbanism, and superblock by an analysis of the cases of Barcelona, Milan, and Shanghai. We dealt with three main aspects for each city. First, the renewal of the existing urban environment. Second, governance issues in the short, medium, and long term. And third, the concerns on the possible risk of gentrification as the improvement in the quality of citizens' life may lead to the rise of real estate values. In particular, our research questions are the following. Are global cities improving the urban quality, the quality of their urban environment and guaranteeing the right to the city? May the experiences of these global cities pre-COVID-19 occur health, social, and economic inequities and consequently may prevent the spread of infectious diseases such as COVID-19? A desk research activity and specific fieldwork carried out in three global cities helped us to answer these questions. First, Barcelona. Barcelona City Council seeks to divide the city in 503 artificial urban cells on the ground of the so-called ecosystemic urbanism principles. The experiment of superblocks is about to apply in different ways depending on the two cities' morphologies. One is the 19th century Sardas extensions, which is set up by 550 identical square blocks of 113.3 meters side in an orthogonal grid of identical 20 meters wide streets, with exceptions of two diagonals and minor streets. This case regards the grouping of 9 square-shaped blocks, of which results in a standardized 400 meter urban cell each, with 5,000 or 6,000 inhabitants, and superblocks include public open spaces such as streets, sidewalks, and at least a square. Up to mid-2021, actions have been implemented just in 6 neighborhood units, but the City Council has recently accelerated these measures. The launching of a competition in the late 2020 started a process that will end in 2033 to reconvert most of Barcelona's extensions in a great superblock. Supported by a public expenditure of around 40 million euros, the area will be divided into 21 green apps and 21 squares, providing more than 33 hectares of pedestrian areas and more than 6.5 hectares of urban green space. This will mean that 1 in every 3 streets will become a green hub, and that each resident will have one of these green apps or square no more than 200 meters away from their home. By taking into account the implementation of the first 2 superblocks carried out in Poblenou and Sant Antoni neighborhood, the governance of the urban renewal project basically concerns 3 main features. First, superblocks require a considerable budget availability to expand them in the entire city due to the high cost of implementation. The first superblock in Poblenou costed 3.5 million euros, while the amount spent for the Sant Antoni neighborhood unit raised up to 8 million euros. Second, the lack of open debates with the citizens in Poblenou caused protests against the poor involvement of local residents. The launching of the successive superblocks, such as the Sant Antoni one, have been accompanied by open debates with the citizens. Thirdly, the overlapping of Poblenou unit to the existing urban built environment implied two types of issues. The mobility system showed incoherence when it changed the traffic flows without implementing in the whole system, and bicycle lanes were not fully reallocated, thus generating conflicts between pedestrians and cyclists. Moreover, no underground parking replaced the remote parking lots. The impact of superblocks will be relevant in the sector of private motorized transport that will result in a better air quality and less urban noise so as to prevent more than 660 premature deaths. Green surface would increase drastically, and the current heat island effect in a 343 block would drop of more than 35%, and public green spaces, blocks, interior, patios, green, and green surface would decrease of 35% too. Nevertheless, upgrading the quality of citizens' life in superblocks implies the risk that rents inside the neighborhood units may rise and long-term residents may consequently be forced out. Poblenou and Sant Antoni superblocks market values seemingly follow the average real estate trends, not suffered by the superblock operated change. In addition, in September 2020, the Catalan Parliament passed a law regulating rent prices on new housing contracts, approved in December 2020 to guarantee accessibility in 60 Catalan municipalities, including Barcelona. Going to the second case study. Chinese superblocks are radically different from those seen in Barcelona. In this drawing, we can see a comparison of two ordinary megaplots in Chinese cities with Barcelona's block grid and New York grid. The main differences are evident in the grain of the road network and in the compactness of the build form. Superblocks can be seen as the evolution of Chinese housing neighborhood constructions since the proclamation of the People's Republic of China onwards, where the first urban schemes were imported from Soviet models. The main concept behind superblocks is that urban planning provides a zoning scheme, and then developers build the residential compound in the form of a gated community, basically isolated from the outside. Shanghai is implementing the Shanghai Master Plan 2017-2035, striving for the excellence global city. One characteristic of the master plan is to enhance everyday livability by realizing a human-scale built environment. The life circle concept, also named 15-minute city, permeates Shanghai's developmental agenda. The master plan for 2035 portrays a scenario in which Shanghai will drastically increase the presence of public space across the city, providing parks and squares covering over 400 square meters within 5 minutes walking distances, furnishing inhabitants with at least 4 square meters of community public space per capita, distributing 99% of public facilities within 15-minute city walking distance in communities, and reducing to 2.5 kilometers the average travel distance for the daily life needs. In 2016, a guideline manual was released by the Urban Planning and Land Resources Administration Bureau. The most important aspects emerging from this document are two. On the one hand, we find the attempt of defining a benchmark for the 15-minute city cycle construction as a part of a broader urban renewal action. On the other hand, we read the government's will to engage communities from below, promoting grassroots participation. Both factors entwine inextricably with Chinese superblock strategy approach to city making, questioning, for instance, on the relations materializing between neighborhoods supersizing and communities accommodation. Some criticalities already emerged. For instance, in Guangzhou, a local researcher Zhu found that implementation is imposed with excessive uniformity regardless of local differences. The principal reason lays in the special characteristic of housing compounds that substantially repeat ubiquitously and generate homogeneous urban environments. Superblocks made cities like Shanghai result in a fluid public urban forms where the human scale becomes approachable within the scale of megaplots, which host gated housing communities. The standard implementation, barely altered by local and circumstantial variations, consists of a simple sequence of actions. The government, who owns the land, sells the use rights to developers who in turn build and sell the dwellings units to inhabitants. This is an example of a generic superblock where we can recognize the planning rationale, that is the maximization of housing surface spacing south, playing with buildings disposition and distancing. The last 2 decades of urban planning generated undoubtedly positive effects on Shanghai's city life if considered from a general perspective. Urban renewal practices regenerated the city and its socio-economic fabric, as we can see in these 2 scales, for instance. 2 symbolic data measured over the previous 10 years synthetically portray its transformation trajectory. On the one side, urban green spaces decisively grew, passing from 120,000 to approximately 160,000 hectares in 2019. On the other side, investments in real estate development more than doubled, shifting from approximately 2,000 million yuan in 2010 to 4.2 thousand million yuan in 2019. However, the impressive numbers of the real estate industry, coupled with housing problems for a large slice of the population, mainly the migrant workers. The economic shift started with the open doors policy, introduced capitalistic mechanisms on the statal stewardship of urban land, turning the housing industry into speculative real estate activities. Forbes report, for instance, that some neighborhoods in Shanghai have risen prices by 40% in the last 5 years. Gentrification and speculation are two reasons why Shanghai Master Plan 2017-2013 set the goal of realizing at least 8% or 10% of housing dedicated to low rent housing, public rental housing, common property rights housing, and resettlement housing. The third case study is Milan. Milanese response to the COVID-19 pandemic in the urban planning field has its roots in something that were already happening since 2012. In 2012, the new urban planning instruments focused on the improvement of the quality of life, availability of services, and public area and accessibility to them. In that urban instrument, as an attachment to the plan of services, appeared a new city district division, different from the administrative division in 8 sub-municipalities. This new division, called NIL mapping, which stands for Local Identity Course, was based on the identification of small local identities, showing demographic data, existing and missing services to be planned, as shown in the current diagrams. Later, in 2018, there was the launching of the neighborhood plan, in Italian Piano Quartieri, was aimed to allocate resources to small-scale local intervention directly asked by the citizens. The neighborhood plan included the Open Squares, in Italian Piazza Aperte program, developed in collaboration with Bloomberg Associates, NACTO, and Global Design Cities initiatives. Among the members of the NACTO board, there was Janet Sadiq-Khan, former commissioner of the New York City Department of Transportation from 2007 to 2013, when happened the well-known process of pedestrianization in Times Square. The Piazza Aperte program aimed to create cheap, fast, and diffused micro-interventions in order to create a dense network of public open areas ready-made, using the tools of the tactical urbanism. Also, they were the occasion to experiment some solution to implement forms and slow and sustainable urban mobility, with the creation of temporary and adjustable bicycle lanes. When the pandemic happened, Milan City Council produced a strategic document called Open Roads, Strade Aperte, and thus used the previous experiences as a response to the pandemic outbreak. The document expressly mentioned the Paris 15-minute city, tactical urbanism, and Barcelona Superblocks as references. The occasion led to the creation of 22 new kilometers of cycling paths and the provision to arrive to 35 by the end of 2020, using painted road signs and the reshuffle of the existing road sections. The second decision, anticipated by the Open Streets document, the so-called the Horse Table Act, allowed bars and restaurants to owners to place outdoor tables free of charge, using part of the sidewalks, but also, if needed, part of the road and parking. This caused a tangible transformation of the urban, of the public space perception, free from cars and more similar to pedestrian areas. Economy, time, flexibility, and radical choice are the keywords of tactical urbanism intervention in Milan, but some possible side effects are to be considered. The light and soft interventions could be fast decaying and need the resources to be transformed in something permanent, or they will become just an operation of postponing the issues. In second place, even if there are many options for urban mobility, the process of dismantling private cars is far to be reached. Traffic and parking issues should be considered and monitored. The third aspect is related to the way Milan City Council aims to find resources to create more permanent, some permanent renewal program, as they did in Piazzale Arquinto, the new pedestrian piazza in the picture. Tactical urbanism is just a small part of the planning in Milan, and so far more permanent, bigger and strategic interventions over public space are supplied by private companies, which trade public services constructions in order to be allowed to develop an area. This happened as a reference for the recent examples in the pictures, Porto Novo and City Life Parks. The better quality of life in a specific area could lead to gentrification and to push out the lower income part of the population living in that area. Apparently, tactical urbanism intervention do not affect the market prices. The Spoleto Venini area did not, for instance, see a significant increase in the housing market values before and after the realization of the new piazza. At the same time, the area of Piazzale Arquinto, with new significant permanent piazza and close to the fancy new urban district, new district of Porta Nova, experienced a significant rise in housing markets. Tactical urbanism interventions could be less effective on the housing market values for many reasons. They are small-scale projects requested by local communities, fast to be operated in many areas at once, avoiding forms of competition between districts. In other words, one of their weaknesses, the temporary aspect, as they were work in progress, is possibly also one of the elements that avoid gentrification. To conclude, the implementation of the 15-minute city tactical urbanism and superblock has started before the pandemic outbreak in dense compact neighborhoods, giving this open spaces back to the slow mobility. This solution provides healthier urban environment that may prevent the spread of infectious diseases such as COVID-19. As a matter of fact, air pollution, social vulnerability, and extreme weather conditions are vectors of the transmission rate of the virus. The solution adopted by global cities like Barcelona and the case studies analyzed are dealing with high levels of air pollution, severe socioeconomic inequalities, and climate change. The COVID-19 pandemic gave city authorities the chance to accelerate this experiment with traffic quietening initiatives, extending cycle lanes and creating new pedestrianized zones. Long-term exposure to air pollutants concentrations is contributing to chronic lung inflammation, a condition that may increase the severity of COVID-19 effects. Reducing the reliance on cars is vital to enhancing global cities' livability, along with tackling lower life expectancy and premature deaths due to environmental issues. The research on 3 global cities in a changing world is a first approximation of the understanding of the role that new urban design solutions play in mitigating the effects of COVID-19. And these urban design solutions are 15-minute city, tactical urbanism, and superblocks. Notwithstanding growing research on post-COVID-19 cities in the field of urban studies, large public surveys should be released by the public to give more comprehensive outlook of the post-COVID-19 cities. And this is the presentation. Thank you for your attention.